With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoweh's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful ends for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more. Welcome, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast. I'm Michael Thompson. I'm with my friend S.J. Jennings, and we are here today to talk about bringing in the new year. What feels like, when I look back over my young 54 years, S.J., what's the new normal going to be, in 2019? Maybe the podcast title would be Stepping into the New Normal, because we're going to be in places we've never been before. I think that's one of the great things about the kingdom is there's a lot of first times. We talk about this often. They don't always go well. Actually, they usually don't go well first times. And yet, if we're becoming someone, our truest self, if what God's doing in us is a work of sanctification and chipping away everything that isn't us, and that we're learning how to be more and more like Jesus, and that's the life that we've been promised, an abundant life, full life, and that's the life that He's afforded us as He gave His life a ransom for many, then there's going to be a new normal. He's going to take me into places in the new year for training and for healing. And so we thought we'd talk about that. We'd explore that a little bit with each other, with conversation and our listeners. So stepping into the new normal, 2019. SJ, what's some of the things that personally, let's look back. When you look back and reflect on 18, and that's a good thing to do, where's God brought you? What's He done? What's He revealed? What's He shown you over these past 12 months?
The first thing that comes to my mind, and we talked about this a little bit a week or so ago too, Michael, I've been with Sherry now since, almost 30 years that I've known her, and we've been together when we first started dating back in 1989. So it's coming up on 30 years. In 2018, we had some revelatory breakthroughs in our relationship. And that came through a resource that we came across about midway through the year called the Enneagram, Enneagram.
I'm glad you didn't ask me to spell that.
Yeah, I know how you would have spelled it. So I spelled it before you. Yeah. So
no, I know where you're going. It was eventful for all of us, but it seemed to be particularly significant for you guys. As we looked at how we're designed. What's a way to mine into that? What's a tool or resource that helps us uncover some of how we're wired? So the Enneagram was a big part of that.
It shines a big fat spotlight too on the false self, because what it has helped me to do, most personality tools, and I don't want this to be a podcast about the Enneagram, but briefly what it helped me to do was to discern that there's parts of my personality that are really kind of showcased, highlighted by my false self. And other personality assessments that I've taken have given me the liberty to just say, well, that's my personality. That's just who I am.
Right.
And they kind of have put me into that box and kept me there, where the Enneagram is really brought me to a place where I want to decide, I want to discern, I want to pray about, is this me? Is this my false self? Is this how God wired me to be? Am I operating out of some kind of woundedness or agreement? So to that end, Sherry and I talked and discovered quite a bit about ourselves and just how we're wired. One of the things about me and my type is that I kind of operate out of my gut. I'm a doer. We don't need to think about this. Let's just do this. And I'm pretty intense. I'm an intense individual in the midst of conversations. And Sherry, over the course of 20 plus, almost 30 years together, kind of has taken that as me being angry with her all the time. Yeah. And this revealed to her that I wasn't angry. I'm just being intense. Not that I never get angry, but she thought I was angry a lot.
The time.
Yeah. So that was a big one this year.
That's a huge revelation.
Yeah, that was a big one.
And one of the things we've learned, just to piggyback on the Enneagram comment or personality, you mentioned something about the false self. And the false self is not the opposite of you. As a matter of fact, what the false self is the arrested you.
That's right.
So when I look at qualities that you have or ways that you're wired, you said, if the intensity is a gift, it's a way that God's made you, then there's a way to offer that to others in important moments and to be careful to not offer it when it's not supposed to be. But if it's hijacked by the false self, if it's arrested, it's something you can use to get your way. Louder, more intense, more serious, more intimidating. Well, that's not holy intensity. Jesus was pretty intense.
Sure he was.
At several times in his life mission, his journey.
But also loving.
You see what I'm saying? So the false self, when I think about some of the things that God's wired me to do and also to be, there's ways that encouragement, I'm an encourager, I'm an inviter. Well, the false self arrests those things, and I encourage and I invite so that I could get encouraged and invited.
Right. Like, oh, Michael, he wants everybody to be involved and get your strokes for it.
And I can do that in order to position myself in somebody else's world. That's the hijacked me.
Right.
And the false self operating those qualities about us. You bear an image. God's put some really cool stuff in you. He's going to grow that up. But the false self is that thing that you've learned over time and how to use it to try to create life for yourself or protect yourself. So when you said that, it just triggered this whole conversation that is really important. And in a marriage, people that have known each other for 30 years, you've learned something this past year of a huge misunderstanding that it's going to be a new normal.
Yeah, and it has been. That was about June, I think.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's important, though. The false self isn't the opposite of your true self necessarily. No. It's the arrested, it's the perverted parts of you that the enemy is using and setting you up to use.
Right. And so you're going to try to do life with those gifts and talents and skills rather than offer
that's
those
good.
Life skills and talents and abilities. So
I love that. We weren't planning on talking about that, by the way, listeners.
Yeah.
So that was for somebody. I don't know who that was for.
You can email us if you need to talk about that some more.
That's right.
Exploring more at Zoweh.org.
Yeah.
But one of the things for me, looking back this past year, this was a big year for the kingdom of Zoweh, small k, kingdom of Zoweh, in respects to the much larger kingdom initiative of Christ and our part and our role in it. Our team really grew. You and Sherry got here, and this was kind of the first year that we were functioning as a team with 7 new players. So God really took me into this time, like early in the year in 2018, it was kind of like, everybody's kind of playing and touching my stuff. They're moving things around.
I like having my friends over, but where's my stuff?
And it was, I'll never forget, I came in, I don't know, it was early in the year, probably still February, March, but Sherry's an organizer, and she's so good at it. It's really great when she's organizing other people's stuff. And so she comes in, and I come in one day, and all this stuff is out of the storage closet. And it's a pretty big storage closet. It's all strewn is the word throughout the office. And I'm like, what is going on? And she is grinning. She's so happy. She's getting this stuff all organized.
Look what I did.
Look what I found. I'm like, I know where that was. Couldn't you put it back? So it's been a year, though, of that.
Transition.
And now just learning different personalities, different ways, and sharing, what Zoweh was. There's no comparison a year later, 12 months later, what Zoweh is now.
An incredible year.
How about just podcasting?
Yeah.
2018.
Right. We started in May. I think we're at about 9,000 unique downloads now.
Right.
Which is,
it's awful.
36 countries.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's goofy.
Yep.
It's amazing in many ways. And so, I think what that's brought to our conversations, we talk a lot about this stuff off mic. And so turning on the mics, these are conversations that we tend to have and go in directions like we just said. I didn't know we were headed that direction.
Right.
The false self or the Enneagram, but that's been big, and it's touched me personally in some significant ways, and it's also something that it's been time for him to show me how to lead and love a team well. So I'm in training there and learning how to, lead conversations, lead gatherings, be involved in a quote meeting that we're trying to get from here to there, and is everybody with us? So communication. And I'm kind of I keep it in my head and heart, and I'm learning this year more and more that's not as helpful to everybody else. They have to wait till I dump it out versus being a little more organized, being a little more forthcoming, giving people some of the direction that they need apart from having to have a conversation. So that's been really, really good.
I'll just publicly affirm you with that, Michael. I have seen your growth in that area. I've experienced it. You were great as a leader coming into the year, but we didn't know a lot of this things were going to go on that went on in the last year. And I mean, we've been in a whole new place. So you've done a great job of calling audibles and, you know what I mean? Just adjusting to the defense that's coming. And
we didn't know we'd be in some of these unique places and positioned by God in some cool places. Although YouVersion writing those devotionals and you being very, very strategic in getting those published. Yeah, so that's been a big part of, I think that 2018 was, I feel like the beginning of moving from a more local, maybe regional ministry initiative to something much larger that's connecting with people.
Yeah, moving to a national ministry. I mean, I look back, before we sat down, I went back through my calendar because honestly, I needed to look back through my calendar to remember what's happened.
That's my next thing to talk about.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, the events that we had an opportunity to participate in and to lead all the way out to Colorado. I mean, we were out there and did a great event out there with a group of guys, Heart of Warrior West. The women's advanced retreat started in January and then our encounter in March and so forth and so on. I mean, just the idea that we are growing into a national ministry, and we've got some really exciting stuff to talk about as we get into 2019, the potential maybe even of crossing some bodies of water to deliver this message. So we'll see what he does, but it's exciting.
Yeah, I like the word remember. It's a tough one when it comes to the work that it takes to remember, like you're saying, looking over a journal, looking over a calendar. When you look at that Google Calendar or you look at your daily calendar and you can go back, it's amazing what you'll find there and what did happen. I think we all kind of have that tendency to live within like a 3-day window, yesterday, kind of today, and what do I got to do tomorrow? What carries over. But to remember, that's what's really nice about the end of year and the new year. If you'll take the time to remember and reflect on and get out in front of you. One of the things I've done for years, and I have years of these now, 1989, I think, was the first journal. And this company keeps making these journals, the same journal. So it looks like a volume of, 30 years of these journals.
Yeah, and it is.
and so there's these archives, when I've written Heart of a Warrior, when I wrote Search and Rescue, those annals, those chronicles, those journals were really, really amazing to go back and look at some of the things that happened, some of the places that I could write down what God said, what happened to me, a vault, if you will, of the good God's up to and the good He's been up to in my life. And there's prayers in there that I've written out. Jesus, we really need some help here. And to see 2 weeks later, thank you, Jesus.
So that's for whatever the result might have been. Yeah. I remember you sharing earlier in this year, just the moment, and it was probably right out of your journal that God led you to leave the ministry that you were in, you and Robin, and start this thing called Zoweh, and where that came from, C.S. Lewis and talking about Bios life and Zoweh life. And,
That was 2000. I mean, that was a journal. 2005 is when it really transitioned, but it got clearer and clearer from about 2003 and 4 till we were filing paperwork to make it official and stuff like that. So I think that's one of the things that we hear that Israel really struggled with was remembering God's protection, His provision, His presence. So I think there's something about all of us that I want my birthday remembered. I want my kids to remember me and their mom. And I think we have that capacity to, can be sad, even offensive, if we're not acknowledged or remembered. And so I think there's a part of that that could be true about God, that He does want us to remember and to take the provision from years ago, that He's going to be faithful. He's going to come through. He's got you in a training module. He's got you somewhere he wants to show you something. And there's a lot of surprises in that. I mean, you weren't looking for the Enneagram. You weren't looking for this part of your marriage that has been going on for 30 years.
No, I really had no idea. I knew once in a while that Sherry would back down from me because I got intense, but I didn't realize.
So how good is God?
Yeah, no doubt.
To sneak up and put something on your plate or on your heart in many ways that you weren't even looking for, but his goodness is, I want to show them something, get them free from that. You just didn't even know what was going on.
Yeah, man. You know what's coming to my mind and in my heart as you're sharing about remembering and how God wants us to remember? I'm thinking about the Passover.
Yeah. Oh, the feasts.
Yeah.
There's festivals and feasts that are on the Jewish calendar for a reason.
Right.
They mark the presence, the protection, the provision of God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one in particular came to me, so I got to go home and journal about that now.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So journaling is I think we're big fans of that. We're big promoters of that. We'll take a break, and then when we come back, I want to just talk a little bit about walking with God into the new year. And what does that look like? What are some things that we could share that we do? What are some things we can share with our friends and allies that they might consider this year stepping into the new normal and stepping into that new normal with God? So we'll be right back.
Hey, Exploring More listeners. We are extending the opportunity to get the Heart of a Warrior audiobook for free. Visit zoweh.org/Christmas. That's ZOWEH.org/Christmas. There are also some other free resources on the Christmas page, which will be available until midnight, December 31st. Start the new year with a new normal, walking in more love, more life, and more freedom.
Welcome back, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast. We're talking about stepping into the new year, to the new normal for 2019, and just how we can do that well. Looking at the year past, reflecting on that, as SJ, you talked about, is a big, where have we been? Where were we? Where did God take us? It's good for your heart, good exercise. It's worth the time. And then, where did you take us? Where are you taking us?
Yeah, where are we headed?
What's next? What are some advanced words for my heart, for my life, that I'm going to be stepping into in the new year? There's seasons of our lives that they don't always coincide with the seasons of the calendar.
Right.
And yet to look at our lives as for a time, God's going to work something in. He's going to reveal. I take this right out of Gary's notes, right? Awaken, deepen, fulfill.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to awaken us to something, maybe a desire, maybe a wounded part of our hearts, our lives, and then he's going to deepen us in that and how true it is, how important it is. He's going to
deepen our relationship with him.
Yeah, having that opportunity to get closer, deepening our connection with the Father, and then fulfilling. Somebody shouldn't be in a hurting pattern for a long time. There should be healing. And then you move on and you learn how to not get taken out by that. The enemy and what the enemy's doing, that's another incredible conversation to have. What's the enemy's plan set against me?
We should be aware of that, right? I mean, we should have some intelligence gathering going on so we understand how he's trying to come against us.
And all of that happens in a day-to-day way, and that's why the journaling can be important. What happened today? To download that into a place with God, or the next morning. What happened yesterday? Where are we? What's the environment that I'm stepping into? Who do I need to have some conversations with? Who am I upset with that I need to talk to?
What do I need to make right? I think about, what's Lewis say? Broken bone in the universe is set, right? Yeah. I mean, working towards
healing,
being partnering with God to make that happen.
Yeah, the restoration of me. We're trying to say there's a great work going on in you. There's a great work going on in the world. There's a restoration that is very significant and important to God, that he is making all things new. And I think the more that we can evaluate and even try to see our lives in light of that, the more we might see.
Sure.
Stepping into the new year, one of the practices that I think is really helpful is asking God, what's a word for my new year?
Mm-hmm.
What's a banner? Is there a banner word or a banner idea, a banner quote to be looking for that, asking God, what's this year going to be about? And if you've never done that before, then this will be your first year to do that.
Right.
To try to do that, do something new. And so SJ, for me, one of the words I just can't get away from, it's kind of like a song that you heard, but now the radio's not on anymore, and it just stays with you.
Keeps playing
You find
in your
yourself
head.
whistling it or humming it. But this word, I think that God's inviting me to carry into the new year and to look for in the new year, and maybe even promote, offer, share more, write about in the new year is validation. Is the word validation. It's something that I long for. I think it's something that we're built for. Our hearts seem to crave it, desire it, want it.
Oh, yeah.
And yet I want to keep exploring more of that with God. And I want to pursue and be attentive to His validating me. Like I said, I'm coming into a year that I've never been in so many of these places before. There's initiation, there's validation that's going to be needed for my heart, for my masculine heart, for my journey, for the role that I play in different places, in other people's stories, but very, very significantly in the story of my redemptive community, my friendships. So I'm not sure if I'm the validator or I'm going to be the validatee, but I think there's something big that God wants to reveal and show to me about His heart for how He loves me through validation and how He wants to love others through validation.
Yeah, man. Let me answer your question for you.
Yeah.
If you're going to be the validator or the validate, I would say yes.
Yes, both and.
Because you're a great inviter and encourager. So you're a natural validator anyway. But the journey that you've been on, that I've been on with you for a number of years now, we've seen it. We've seen the power, we've seen the importance of validation. And when we hear from men, I remember a story from last year, we had 400 guys in the room for the Heart of a Warrior encounter in March. And you looked at the men at the very beginning of the weekend and said, I'm so proud of you. And there was one man in the room who came all the way from Nebraska to Virginia,
right,
and came up to you after that first session weeping, telling you that no one had ever said that to him before. So you said that to a room of 400 guys, but you said it to that guy.
Yeah, and it was powerful. I mean, and it wasn't untrue. I mean, I was.
No doubt.
They had all gone through quite a bit to get there. Some of them had really, really gone through quite a bit to get there. And that was more assumed on my part. I just have known for the stories that they tell, it wasn't easy to get away with God for 3.5 days. So to validate that, to acknowledge that, it wasn't just hard for that guy to get there. It's been hard for that man for a long time.
His whole life.
And it landed, it landed so softly and so powerfully. And he said he'd never been told that, like you said. And you're like, whoa.
Yeah, it was like when you're searching, if you've ever done a jigsaw puzzle, and it's like, there's the piece I was looking for.
Yeah, that's the broken bone in the universe.
It really was.
Getting set.
Yeah.
How about you?
So that's exciting, man.
What do you feel like you're taking into the new year, or what do you feel like God's forecasting for you in a theme or a word?
And I'll share a little bit of a story in our next couple of podcasts about this, but the word for me that's been kind of stirring up for 2019, for the end of this year, is vulnerability. It's been an interesting journey already. We were at the Heart of a Warrior Advance weekend a couple weeks ago. Our friend Gary Barkalow shared about when we pursue God, we're often looking for clarity and kind of skip over engaging with Him just for the mystery of it all.
Yeah.
And so that's a big one for me too. There's mystery involved with why this word vulnerability has been stirred up, why it needs to be important in my life, what is going on with all that. So I'm trying to embrace and engage with God and live in that mysterious uncertainty of what He's up to.
Yeah. I mean, it just makes me smile because so often, not as much anymore, but for so often in my life, I wanted to solve God. I want answers. I want to know what
clarity.
To do, when, where, how. And that's not bad. But I remember when Gary was sharing that with us, and then he said that mystery is an invitation to intimacy.
That's right.
I was like, oh my.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I immediately think of my wife. She doesn't want to be solved.
Right.
She wants to be known. She wants
Mm-hmm.
to be enjoyed. She
Mm-hmm.
wants to be heard.
Oh man, that's big. Yeah.
And what heart doesn't? And
Yeah,
so,
I don't want somebody to try to solve me like I'm a riddle or a puzzle
right.
either, you
So
know?
what about God? Is he vulnerable? I mean, we're talking about God validating. I remember hearing Eldridge at a conference talk about God being vulnerable, meaning we have a will, we can choose him or not. I mean, it sounds like a 6th grade note. Will you go with me? You know,
That's right. Check yes or no.
yes or no,
Yeah.
that you give your friend to give to her. And, you know, that there's something precious about that God would put himself out there. He could be rejected.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a whole other conversation of sovereignty and wills and all that stuff. But I think of, is God asking us to do anything that he hasn't done or isn't a part of something he's even made or created? We know the enemy's hijacking all that stuff.
Trying to.
You know, making you feel guilty or fearful about being vulnerable. But that doesn't mean vulnerability is bad. It's just that's how the enemy makes it work or tries to make you feel. Same with validation. Can I trust God to be my primary validator where he's seeing me and belovedness, right? And he loves what he sees and he's doing what he can to get that message across some of the security systems that I have. And he's invited me to open my heart to that, open my heart to him. And yet there's this guarding your heart. With that, guarding your heart.
Yeah.
What do you feel like the enemy's, I mean, right on the heels of all this, what do you feel like the enemy's looking to do? How's he making this pursuit of vulnerability difficult?
Proverbs 4:23, right? Above all else, guard your heart, for it's the wellspring of life. So that's really easy for me. It's easy for me to be guarded.
On the defense?
On the defense. Not in the way that that's intended in the scripture, but it's easy for me to take that, arrest it, as we talked about earlier in the podcast, you know. My false self tells me that vulnerability is weakness.
Wow.
Yeah. So when I hear guard your heart, okay, I can do that. That's pretty easy for me. But again, so it's unraveling some of those scriptures that have worked pretty conveniently for me. Like, no, I'm not going to talk. I'm guarding my heart. I'm not going to talk about that. You know, that is not what was intended with that. And this whole thing, I wrote this down because I got to go pray and journal about this too. Is God vulnerable? Yeah, I know the answer is yes, but what does that mean if I'm wrestling with vulnerability being weakness?
Right. Good. I think, you know, look at what happened when Eve and Adam choose another path. They, you know, step into a fallenness. God knew there was something created that had that vulnerability to it, that fragileness that could go another way. I mean, it's a wild idea.
It is
in his sovereignty, but was Jesus sad? Was Jesus vulnerable? If he shows us the heart of God because he is God, then we see that there's an emotional facet to all of this. And that's where the enemy wants to do some damage in that. So for me, I want to soak in that some more. What is it, God? What's this validation mean? I want to pay attention.
Yeah. Before you move on, let me just say this last thing about your word, my word, whatever, listeners, your word that God lays on your heart, whatever it might be. Here's what's going to happen. So when this kind of got stirred up in my heart and I allowed the opportunity for God to kind of come in there and, okay, let's stir this up a little bit. Let's muddy these waters some and find out what's really going on. I can't get away from vulnerability and the word and books about it and people talking about it on podcasts. It is everywhere.
You see it more.
Oh my gosh.
Do you think it was everywhere before or do you think you just didn't see it everywhere before?
Yeah,
or is it both and? Yes.
I think I just didn't see it. I think it's around, you know, although it's around, I think about it, you know, I just got a new to me car, a new used car, and it's like, man, this would be great. I didn't see any of these on the road and now I see them everywhere.
That's
you know
funny.
what I mean? So it's kind of like that. And I don't know if you've experienced that with validation, but I don't know if you're just more alert to it or God brings it across your path more. Or that's somewhere in that secret sauce, it's in between.
It's true. I'll be writing something maybe devotional for our daily orientation. I'll be working on something and I'll write something down and then I'll see it later that day in something else.
Right.
So I think there's something about being attuned to and looking and expectant, hopeful. And I think that's what we're talking about. Back to resolutions, in the new year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just want to kind of reboot in my life that solitude and quiet are really, really my friends. They're really good for me. Contemplating, reflecting, writing, feeling what I'm feeling, thinking in a little slower gear rather than reacting and responding to...
not having to move on to the next thing. Mm-hmm.
So there's the beauty of journaling, what the pen and the paper and the quieter times, which tend to be earlier in the morning or later at night, when you can shut some things off, the kind of times a day where you need a lamp. Those are good solitude days where if you can steal those moments, if you can make those moments happen, the reward, the richness of them is in those moments. You're reflective. You're paying more attention to things that are going on in your heart, stirrings and processing it. Man, autopilot is just not the way to go every day, all day. So in the new year, I want to do that. So that's just one of the things that I know I have to protect. I have to make effort and make the time to do, and I want to do that better in the new year because that's where such good things tend to come to me from God in those quieter times.
I think one of the things I learned this year, Michael, related to what you're talking about in that is it's harder for me to say no to things than it is to say yes to them right now in this time of my life. But I'm learning the more I say no to things, the more I have time for the things that are important.
That's good. I'm with you. I want that too.
Yeah. Well, so in order to journal, right, you've got to say no to maybe the extra 30 minutes of sleep.
Right.
And get up at 5:30 instead of 6.
Take a walk during the day. Stay in the truck a little longer. Arrive somewhere earlier. There's ways to steal that kind of reflective time. But 5 and 10 minutes is not the same as 30 or 40. There's something about posturing yourself in that way. So, yeah, friends, allies, we're hopeful that you can step into the new year with God. If this is catching you at a time where, you're not sure where God is, or you're not sure who you are in the story, there's big question marks. Or maybe you're new to the podcast and you're wondering if God is really even there, real, for you. Writing these prayers out, writing some of this stuff out in the new year going into 2019 might be a great place to start. We ask this question a lot, even of ourselves in conversation, especially in the kingdom life that we're living. What do you want?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is it you want?
Why are you here? What are you hopeful for? And to write that out, it's not just placing an order with God. You're really being honest with what's in your heart and articulating that somehow. What is it you want? And then I would say, what is it you really want?
Right.
What is it?
Yeah, because we kind of have our pre-programmed answers.
I got the genie. Right? I got the genie list, you know. But then, what is it that I really want? And it's amazing how that list gets a little bit divided in a good way. There's things I want, but then there's things I want for my kids. There's things I want for my wife. I want for my friends. I want for our mission. That list can get pretty good, and you don't even know it's in there until you take the time. Write it out and express that.
And I think, Michael, too, it's important to tell whoever might hear this and go, man, why bother? Why should I bother thinking about what I want? Because no one's going to listen to me anyway. You have a good father. You have a good father that wants to bring you
good gifts,
the desires of your heart, the good gifts. And he wants to look at the desires of your heart like a good father would and say, not yet, or tell me more about that. Why is that the desire of your heart right now? And he's not a genie. Yeah. So working things out in your heart through that engagement with him.
Awaken, deepen, fulfill.
That's right.
Awaken, deepen, fulfill. So we're looking forward to the new year. I want to encourage you to dedicate it, officially dedicate it. December 31st, January 1st, one of those days. Those are great dedication days. And to do that, maybe with a friend, maybe do that with your spouse. And if you want, you can take a look at some of the prayers on our website, the daily prayer. Take that on. Consecrate the year. Dedicate the year. We can talk some more about that as we get into the new year. And that's a great way to posture yourself in an expectancy and hope and looking. It's amazing what you find when you look. And as you're looking for God and looking for what He's up to in your life, we call it the good that He's up to in your life as a part of your orientation. I find a lot more of who God is, how He loves me when I'm looking for it.
No doubt.
I want to end with that encouragement to be on the lookout for the good that God's up to in your life and to roll with it. It may not be what you ordered. It may not be what you thought. He may have a very sneaky, in a loving way, right, way of revealing something in your life that He wants to heal you from or train you up in. I'm looking forward to seeing how God sneaks up on me in this new year.
Amen, man. Amen. So one last thing for me, Michael, I just want to say this is Thursday, December 27th. So there's about 4 days left in the year of 2018. And one of the things that we do here at Zoweh is we want to ask folks if they want to partner with us, if they want to provide. I think about this often as I'm talking with folks about supply and fuel for Zoweh. I think about the war bonds that were sold during World War II. I mean, you couldn't go over there and fight in the battles at Normandy and throughout Germany, but you could buy a war bond and you could support, you're paying for bullets, you're paying for artillery shells, you're paying for gas in the trucks and the tanks, jackets for the guys.
Gauze and Band-Aids.
Gauze and bandages, that's right.
Oh, man.
Man, we need gauze and bandages because there's a lot of wounded guys out there. We're trying to reach them. And so at the end of the year here, probably about 2 weeks ago, we received a $50,000 challenge gift from a beloved partner to our ministry. Really, the idea behind it was to inspire others to join the fight, to partner with Zoweh in reaching these men and women.
There's a lot of information on the Zoweh website that we want to draw our friends and allies to, free resources, events coming up in the new year. That's a great way. If you're not a subscriber to the daily orientation, that's a great place to go for a daily devotional that lands in your inbox. One of the things on our list for 2019 is our own Zoweh app, where things are a little more centralized and we can utilize that feature and that tool. So that's on our docket for exploration and just a lot of opportunities. We want to encourage and equip our friends so they can encourage and equip their friends, because that's what was done for us.
That's right.
And so that's what we're hopeful to do for the hearts of others. So Happy New Year. Look forward to visiting, sharing, exploring more with you in 2019. Thanks for being with us, partnering with us, and we will see you down the road. We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoweh.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoweh on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoweh on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.